Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here with this amazing panel. And we're going to give a minute or so to get others to join, and then we'll get it started. We're seeing people trickle in here on the webinar, so just give a few more seconds here, but we are going to get it started in just a minute. Okay, I think we are ready now with most of the people on the session here. So again, super excited to be here. Welcome everyone, and I really appreciate having this amazing panel with me here today. I'm gonna the plan for today is very straightforward. We are gonna I'm gonna go through a little bit of a few slides, and then we'll go to intros from the panel here, and then we'll go to Q&A. So please make sure to use the Q&A function here in Zoom. Submit your questions, and everyone look at those, upvote them, and we'll get to those kind of midway into this panel. Feel free also to engage in the chat, introduce yourself, tell us where you are calling from, where you're connecting from, and because I think we have a kind of a big audience here for this session. And so let me start by introducing myself. My name is Ignacio Castro. I'm the managing partner at 128 VC, which is a new VC firm supporting early stage founders in the AI B2B space based out of Boston. I've been with Founder Institute for many years. I started the Founder Institute program in Costa Rica and then ran it in Boston for many years. And now I'm leading a new initiative that I'm going to talk about in just a minute for kind of the global organization in Founder Institute. So let me start by sharing my screen here. I have a few slides here. Just to be safe, a little bit of a disclaimer here, just to so everyone knows that the content that is presented today is not directed to any investors or potential investors, and it does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation to buy any securities. And with that out of the way, I wanted to just mention a little bit about Founder Institute. Founder Institute is a global network of accelerators that turns ideas into fundable startups and startups into global businesses. It's probably the largest organization of this nature, and we have 7,000 plus alumni that have raised almost 2 billion in funds, estimated value of 35 billion. So it's a very large network. We are in 100 plus countries, many mentors and leaders, local leaders in different cities, and a large group of investors. So Founder Institute is really a great community. And these are some of the examples of companies that we have in the portfolio. And what I was mentioning before, now I'm leading an initiative that we call the AI Hub. And what we are doing is basically looking at our portfolio and start identifying those companies that are working in this space, and looking to bring a number of more specialized resources to those type of companies. So basically the flywheel that we are trying to create here is looking at the companies that we have in the portfolio. As part of Founder Institute, we have a program called Founder Lab, which helps with especially the fundraising for our portfolio companies. We also have, as I mentioned, a large group of mentors and investors, which we organize through an initiative called Founder Institute Venture Network, which is kind of the group, the mentors that are kind of in the doing investment in our network. And also there was a spin-off of Founder Institute called VC Lab, which I think we have a number of people in the audience from the VC Lab community, which is a program that has been spearheading the creation of new funds around the world. So, and the third leg of the stool here is corporate partners, which is something that still work in progress, but we feel like that's another critical element for this initiative to really make an impact with our companies. So that's what we are working on. So with that, and I'll go into the panel, but just before doing that, if you are interested in participating in some fashion with this AI Hub, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can help you kind of get engaged with what we are doing there. There's an upcoming private pitch event that we are planning by the end of October, so please let me know if that's of interest. With that, I'll want to jump into the panel. We are fortunate to have a diverse group here. We have, as I was joking with Doug in LinkedIn earlier this week, we have people represented from the East Coast and the West Coast. So we can talk about kind of what the perspectives are here there, and some probably healthy competition there between what we see in each region. But fortunate to have Doug Griffin here from managing partner of a spatial capital. I also have Valerie Bertel, partner from Yellow Rocks Capital, which are our West Coast representatives. And then on the West Coast, we have Avi Javad. She's the co-founder of AI Innovators Community, which is doing very interesting things here in Boston, and probably wider than that. And Avi is a long-time angel investor as well. And Jennifer Jordan, venture partner at iGlobe Partners, which is also a very active angel investor here in the Boston area. But with that, I would like to turn it to the group here for them to do an introduction, which and let me stop my screen here so we can see the speakers. So let me start with Jennifer here. Let's go ladies first. So please go ahead, Jennifer.
So Ignacio, just to introduce myself to everyone, my name is Jennifer Jordan. I'm an early stage investor. I previously was a managing director of Techstars. I was also part of the Mass Ventures, which is the state of Massachusetts venture capital fund. And I currently work for iGlobe Partners, where we invest in seed and Series A companies that we believe has the potential to be global game changers. And some of the companies you might know include companies like Twist Bioscience, MatterWorks here in Boston, Matterport, Unity Software, NerdWallet. So you can see running in those a theme where data and optimization, analysis, and AI have a big role.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us today. I'll go with Valerie next.
Thank you. Ignacio, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Me and Doug were the new classmates from VC Lab. I'm loving it so far. It's a fantastic learning experience in the cohort. My journey with AI was quite not straightforward. I started as a molecular biologist. I was early on in genetics when they started genetic sequencing. And for me, I think seeing the development of science and the evolution and what we see for the last 15 years, it gave me a lot of hope. And also, it's a feeling that something is happening, right? Like if you're in research, you're kind of like touching the beginning of a big wave. And for me, AI, what I've seen for the last 10, 15 years and what's happening right now, I can feel this wave. For me, it was through molecular biology and sequencing. And also I moved to China almost 13 years ago, and I've seen the development of the technology innovation in that part of the world. So right now, being based in San Francisco and managing venture fund, I think I can have a global perspective for the countries, and also seeing academia, seeing technology and development, manufacturing and infrastructure in China, it allows me to see penetration of this technology in many different areas. Right now, we're actually investing in fintech, looking at future of education, future of work, and also looking at gaming and Web3 as the new area of development. I'm based in San Francisco, but right now in Germany, so it's a little bit dark on my side.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate you being here. And then let me go to Doug next.
Hey, thanks, Ignacio. It's always great to reconnect with you. I'm Doug Griffin, Managing Partner of Spatial Capital. Just a little bit about my background. I spent 15 years as an operator working as a technologist in media and entertainment. So I was at places like Industrial Light and Magic, working on the big blockbuster films, Star Wars, Harry Potter, so on and so forth. Worked on some of the AAA games at Electronic Arts. Subsequently became an entrepreneur and had exits at Disney, Apple, and Roblox. And then for the past 3 years have been investing in venture capital space. First in a fund in Switzerland that focuses on health tech and climate, and most recently a spatial capital. So it's great to have you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for that. And last but not least, Avi.
Yeah, thanks, Ignacio, and great to be here. Thanks for having me. Everyone, my name is Abhi Yadav. I still call myself as a founder and love being an entrepreneur. Although I've been lucky enough to be an angel investor in 50 plus AI first companies. I'm currently the co-founder of this community. We started after my last M&A exit. It's called AIC, which is AI Innovators Community. Primarily started out of first-time founders out of MIT and Harvard ecosystem, where they're like, you know, deep tech, a lot of PhDs are trying to commercialize opportunity and, you know, kind of struggling to how to think about platform or product or positioning, you know, and get that sort of gap out there. So it's more about connection. At some point in time, we are trying to launch our own syndicate. I've been also trying to do like a sort of more venture studios thing, not trying to do the fun, but, you know, want to stay in the kind of SPV world. But always work with some of the other VC funds and kind of helping them kind of identify deep tech opportunity around the area, Boston primarily, but also globally. You know, my strength has been, because my background has been more on the consumer science and enterprise software, I kind of play at this intersection of AI, enterprise software, and customer experience. That's where most of my companies have been 3x founder with successful exit, have been played B2B, B2C, both play. So excited to be here and love to be part of this conversation community.
Thank you so much, Avi, and everyone for joining this. So let me start with kind of a few questions, and for the audience here, again, please send your questions in the Q&A features. I'm not sure if we're able to monitor the chat. It's been very active, and please upvote those questions so that we get to those that are of more interest in the audience. But let me start with this, which is, as I was preparing for this party, actually, someone sent me this blog post of Seth, which is a partner at Greylock, and it feels like, and I'm gonna paste it here on the chat, but it feels like everyone is trying to figure out what is the thesis around what to invest these days, with all the noise and all the kind of the trend around AI, and it's very interesting to see kind of the different perspectives. So that's where I wanted to start, is kind of ask the group here, and probably we can go through the room, because this is I think a foundational question for this panel, which is, how are you seeing the space? I mean, what is something that what are the kind of things that you feel have more potential, have kind of the things that most interest you guys in the type of things that you're seeing? But is definitely interesting to see kind of how people is looking at this from different perspectives, and love to hear from you. So let me maybe start with the same order here and go with Jennifer first. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was gonna say I was gonna throw it off to listen to other people first. So what are we seeing and what do I get really excited about? I think one of the, this is a really interesting time in AI because we can look back and say now for AI is kind of like the internet 10 years ago, right? In 2000, when we were doing things with AI and we were doing things with the internet, like on the internet side, there was no supply chain. So you wanted to do things that required a back end in the physical world through the internet, you couldn't do it, right? We just didn't have the compute and capacity to do what we can do today with AI. And so it makes for real breakthroughs. But what I would say is I really look for people who are building either fundamental new technology or where there's, as they're pulling data together, including proprietary data, and in each case, they're making real applications that people want to use. And so I'm not like, I don't believe the end all be all is GPT or generative AI. I really believe in finding the right solutions for the right use cases and problems and going after places where you can see the value that will be created with those solutions. And I'd love to hear from other people and then I can give some examples.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Valerie, thank you.
I guess we're moving in the order. It's a really good question. What I like the most about what's happening right now, yes, of course, there's a lot of noise and our investors and people around, like, how do you make sense, right? There's so much happening. I think for me, there's a couple of things. First of all, I was with Google until April on the cloud space. So I've seen Google basically enables cloud digital transformation with a lot of corporations. So I've seen many things that are happening. It gives me, I think, an advantage and an edge in a way. And also, I feel like specifically this year, in the first couple of months of 2023, AI finally was breaking into public consciousness. It means that people start to understand before, okay, AI was some sort of a concept that people couldn't relate to. And now people can use it every day, right? So it's so much more available for investors and for people to understand how to use it. Where I'm looking for investments, I usually try to find people who build deep, right? Good example would be Grammarly and DeepL versus ChatGPT, right? Grammarly was focusing, I was using it as a non-native speaker for many years for translation and crafting emails. And now I can see once they launched AI, better parts, right? And I would compare the same text writing through ChatGPT, which is more generic, it helps you with everything, versus Grammarly and DeepL, which is translation, emails, text writing. It's so much better, right? The quality and the speed. So I'm trying to find those deep knowledge of specific areas, similar to what Jennifer was saying, right? And another area which gives me a lot of excitement is, of course, science, molecular discoveries, genetic sequencing. Every area of science is accelerating right now with AI. That's not the area we're investing because I know that it's a long time, capital intensive, but just understanding that it will accelerate the science really quickly in many areas, not just biology. That's the big area that excites me and make me very happy as a scientist to see.
Perfect. Thank you, Valerie. Let it go with Doug next.
Ignacio, it's a really great question. And I'll premise it by saying there's no doubt that the big general purpose models are going to fundamentally change the world. And we're at this moment in time where AI is impacting us right at this beginning of a huge transformation in society. But when I think about it from an investment perspective, the general purpose models from an investor perspective take significant amount of investment. And there's risk. There's the opportunity that open source models, the Lambdas, for instance, might, 5 people in a garage might take an open source model and compete with an open AI. And so I find that fundamentally challenging. I would go further to say that the wrapper apps on top of ChatGPT and other open, big, large language models are also difficult from an investor perspective because they typically lack a moat. So it's a very easy for other companies to compete, and there's not a lot of brand connection with the actual users. If they find a different, chatbot that's a little bit better, they'll hop over in a heartbeat. So similar to Jennifer's perspective, I look for unique models, proprietary data, and I find that when you have one or both of those combinations in a very specific area where you can deliver real, tangible value to your users, I think that's the place that investors should be looking.
Nice. Thank you, Doug. And Avi, where are
Yeah.
you seeing? What do you think?
Yeah, the interesting part of talking at the end is like, okay, you said all the right points. I mean, increment, I totally agree with every one of you. I personally feel being both as a founder, but also looking the switching side as an investment perspective, coming through with a lens of like really enterprise pain areas, even right now, and keeping in mind that we have seen last 5 years in COVID an unprecedented amount of newer digital data proliferation, because a lot of people had, so we should not underestimate the power of like proprietary data with an intersection of a real enterprise problem. And that problem has been around for long, but now for some reason we have a far more richer data, which was not possible 5 years back or 10 years back, or the nature of that data was like very file-based, dumb, which now could be like continuous. So one is that aspect. The second thing I personally believe, on top of enterprise pain, every interesting opportunity right now is is somewhere around interoperability of systems. So, there are people have come to this conclusion like 10 years back, and I was in this game like with customer data platform category and all that. Everyone was trying to be the system of something. Like, I want to be a system of record. I want to be a system of this, I want to like winners take all market. I feel there is now a need of like system of intelligence from that, aspect. But at the same time, there's a lot of like hidden gems or ideas waiting in the interoperability play, which is, go after like regulated industry. Think about healthcare, think about like pharma. Like we have this company that's been doing pretty well in connecting the marketplace aspect of mom and pop, like pharmacy shops with like, the right like people looking for a certain drug type which is not available, and there's no like system to look up like where do I call like 10 store and find out, as an example. So like the intersection of various tools and systems and workflow is just creating an unprecedented amount of newer opportunities, which is also both, data led, but at the same time very AI led same time. So
Thank you, Avi. And maybe just I'll turn the order around so we give more of a chance to do this in a different order. But Avi, one thing that I've seen is, I mean, and I think this is at least when I start seeing this, give me more clarity around thinking about this space, is kind of thinking about the stack of technology, right? And how you have kind of the infrastructure, you have the NVIDIAs of the world, right? You have and the cloud providers, then you have the foundational models, and then you have the more of the application layer. I mean, is that something that how do you see the space in terms of the technology stack? And maybe, I mean, if you can bring maybe an example or two of companies that you have seen in this space, and I'll then continue with the rest of the group here to get your perspective as well in terms of how you are seeing the companies kind of in these different layers of the technology stack.
yeah. So somebody said that in somebody's framework, but I love that. They're like makers, shapers, and takers. So the makers are like the real foundation model building companies. And like biology, there are a lot of like teams, and there's an opportunity we're involved where like somebody's making this biology kind of foundation model. Obviously, this requires a lot of resources from an investment perspective, requires like a lot of like data play, some strategic advantage, maybe a CVC play, maybe, I don't know, a lot of money just because the need of compute out there, we're talking about pre-seed of like 40, 50 million plus here for these maker bid. Then there are these shapers, which is very attractive angel and VC opportunities, which I call like shapers are basically experts or intelligence cloud or fine-tune model play where you're just taking like one area and could call it as a middleware opportunity, call it, some sort of interoperability like Swag. It may not, but at the same time, they're not like super widgety, but they have some proprietary expertise or a proprietary data, or there's a mousetrapping element to it, which is pretty scalable at some point in time, with network effects and other. So that's the whole shaper opportunity. And as a relevant example, we're seeing like there's a company I'm invested in. They're creating in gaming specifically. I'll use an example. Like everyone is trying to create like this new non-playing character, AI-based power character, right? But this company had some sort of proprietary access, some signs. These guys have been seasoned, repeat founders. They created a central casting, like a library of these non-playing characters, which can be then used in like a lot of like these kind of easy user-generated games and widgets in a kind of a DevOpsy way. But then you could do this in one platform over the other platform, and the third platform is kind of more easy, rather than sort of doing it all like ground up, if you're like a game developer, just kind of shortening that path, but then giving these kind of central library of, characters which are pre-trained, which you can utilize and kind of even white label it because it's open source. So I see that as kind of, the shaper. And then there is like where there is a bellwether situation is the taker part, where everyone's using some open AI kind of API and they have a widget and they're like, okay, here's a persona app, here's this app, talk to this is like BotPress. You could create a chef agent, you could create this persona. Like, I would say here, the tolerance of perfection is way down. Like people are not expecting if it is like not accurate and all that. But I don't know. I have mixed feeling in my mind with my invested hat. I wouldn't do that, the kind of take approach. But then there are like arguments on this where you could start off, be the early to the market, get some momentum, do the PLG, get started there while you're trying to get to the middleware part in a moment. So I'm sorry, this was my sort of long framework filled with example.
No, that's great, Avi, but it's a different take on what I've seen, and definitely we've seen a lot of takers all over the place with OpenAI and the APIs, and we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see if any of those actually really kind of have legs and go a long way. But definitely there's a lot of activity in that top layer. Doug, let me go to you with your take.
Yeah, as far as the AI tech stack, I think if you fundamentally look at it, there's two big accelerants. One is cloud compute. And so the Google Clouds, AWS, we have now at our fingertips essentially a, fully scalable compute platform on the cloud. And so tasks that were impossible just a few years ago because of the cloud infrastructure that's been built can now run almost in real time. And so that infrastructure of cloud has made this fundamentally possible. I'd go further to say that NVIDIA's progress on GPU and parallel compute has drastically accelerated it. And that's just not it's not just the hardware stack, but also the software stack to enable parallel compute has really been substantial. And I think as a general trend, you know, what we're seeing today are these big general purpose models, which require significant compute up in the cloud. I think the trend that we will see maybe 5 years from now are more specialist models that can run on maybe even consumer devices very quickly because they're trained on smaller parameter sets and more defined data. And so you might see this trend from the cloud towards consumer devices in the upcoming years.
Great, thank you, Doc. And Valerie next.
Okay, perfect. We're skipping Jennifer. There are many layers of the stock which you can talk about. I think the area what I see, I'm investing in early stage, right? When for example, this year was large models started, we had almost like an emergency meeting with our portfolio companies, and we asked them like, how are you using AI? How are you using generative AI? Like, what are you doing for your teams? And we had an amazing feedback, of course, just showing within some technological startups. But most of the founders, they say, we're talking to our engineers, and if they're not using those models for code, they will be out, unfortunately. We will have to fire them if they're not adapting, if they're not changing. So what is happening, I think, in the data creation, in the code creation, this is just fantastic. I have one of the very chatty founders. There's two of them. One is the quiet PhD, and another person, he's like really just talks everything and shares every model, every little tweaks. And he showed me some gaming parts, because in gaming, there's so many like, I'm not an expert of gaming, but he would show me some shapes that will be trembling on the wind. And he just uses ChatGPT to create this quite a complicated pieces of code. And he was like, this is amazing. My whole team of 10 engineers, I don't need them. I can work by myself and just have somebody who will test it and create it. So I think the advancement in that area, it just, I think that lowers the barrier for companies to start, right? I mean, we have Google Cloud or like just the multi-cloud strategies, writing codes, generating images, everything. It's so much easier. They need less money from investors to start companies and to scale them and to come to the break-even point. So that's, I think, the very big area. And talking about GPUs, I'm also watching the Chip Wars. If you know, last year winner, the best book of the year was Chip Wars, right? That is super interesting. What is happening on a more geopolitical landscape? Where are we going to have those rare minerals, right? Like, where are we going to have a bottleneck, and which country will be a winner or leader? Just starting from the ground up, like literally physical manufacturing of those chips, right? That's the area I'm trying to pay attention to. Thank you.
Very, very interesting, Valerie.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing that up. And last but not least, Jennifer.
Yeah, so that really interesting, Valerie, that you mentioned the chip wars. And Doug, I keep thinking back to your early days in EA and Friends, where they were trying to develop libraries for like every way that you could throw a football, right? Or every way you could throw a ball had to go into one library. Until then, it was all customized things. And I feel like there's two things there. One is we're with the GPUs we have today, we're able to accomplish an incredible amount. And I'm sure Jensen's going to keep driving them down. But I think this will also spawn kind of a next generation of thinking about hardware that can accelerate the training of large models, as well as hardware that helps you fine tune and can be at that consumer end, like Doug was describing. One of the really interesting things in this flow is that a lot of the places where there's real value now look like they're coming from places where different types of AI or different types of applications are converging, right? You hear the phrase digital twin coming back, which are really physics-enabled models or physics-informed models, right? Being combined with AI to be able to make much more robust, much more accurate predictions at fine scale. Those things are very interesting to me. A few years ago, we were talking about continuous and federated learning. Now you're getting in the place where you could have something generative, but with continuous federative learning giving you feedback, right? And we're just at the cusp of those places, and those things personally to me get me very excited about where we'll go. Let me give you a couple examples of things that I find exciting, and I'm biased. One of these is a portfolio company of ours in Boston called Matterworks. And what MatterWorks realized was that there was a tremendous amount of data sitting in the raw output from mass spectrometry machines. And in the world of proteomics, they've built, and metabolomics, they've built a large spectral model. So they can now take that data, and the models just had a breakthrough. For the first time, we can see things that we've not trained on and be predictive about what protein and how much. And that's kind of an amazing feat. It opens up a whole bunch of other things in terms of the accuracy for biomanufacturing, for identifying new drugs and new targets. But it's also a really simple example of access to data plus a transformer style model, right? So I'll stop there and let other people chime in with their examples or thoughts.
No, thank you, Jennifer. And yeah, what is happening in kind of life science space with this is just incredible, and kind of the speed at what is things are changing is just.
I can let me add a thought there though that's really interesting. I'd be curious about if anybody else in the panel's been looking at life sciences. One of the really tricky things here is you have teams that are forming that are computationally strong. They're AI experts, but they're not, and they may even have life science people on the team, but they're not actually people who've done drugs or drug discovery. And those companies are very challenged because what happens is they raise money from AI and science and AI and software investors. And then as they start to report output and put output, the people who would use that are the biotech and pharma companies and the biotech investors. And they immediately ask them, what are your targets? What's your pathway to clinical? How are you going to walk this down? So one of the interesting things about AI is it seems to require real thinking about how you build and scale a sort of multidisciplinary team that has the expertise for what you're targeting with your AI.
Well, Jennifer, I see this outside of biotech as well. I think it's a really great point. There's a lot of brilliant young technologists who come in and are just disrupting whatever market space that they're in. But without the experience, the network knowledge of the market that they're trying to target, it's really hard to get sort of product market fit, to understand how to steer the product and the company towards growth. And I think that's going to be a challenge for young technologists. And something I value is people with experience. Maybe it's some of my gray hair that I have myself, but I appreciate people who come from a market space who identify a real problem, something that can really be solved, and that use technology to solve it, as opposed to, hey, what can we do with this tech? Oh, this looks interesting, and jump it up.
I have something to add as the person who came out of academia and biology specifically. Two parts. First of all, you've heard about prompters, right? It's a new profession. And people who are prompters, they're not just knowing how to use technologies. The people with a deep experience. Let's say I'm a geneticist and I'm becoming a prompter. So start using GPT or technology team to solve my problems. So I think seeing this interdisciplinary, it's almost like with languages, somebody who can speak 2 languages, right? Like 2 or 3 languages. That's how I see the future. And I've seen it in the labs. This is when I was starting, 13, 14 years ago, computational biologists, there were like just a few people. Similar was what Jennifer said, that right now you have more AI people and less scientists. And talking about that, there's one company I'm literally just reviewing and doing due diligence. Super interesting. It's a geneticist who turned into, she developed an agency, finding those, she was a geneticist herself, and she's seen with the sequencing, with the advancement of personalized medicine, that there was a need for those scientific people. And she's building a marketplace, which is actually, she's turning the agency, which she was successfully building, into a marketplace to funnel talent for disruption of digital healthcare. It's everything about, let's say, genomics, telemedicine, AI, drug discoveries. And she's helping to find these rare talents and place them, sometimes as like 3-6 months or a year, to specific startups or corporations who are trying to do some advancements. So this is super interesting. For me, I feel like investments like that will actually give you a pipeline. You can see what's happening in healthcare, where the disruption is happening. So for me, I'm also trying to find those mega connectors, I would say, right? It's like a neural network, somebody or company or person who can give you more access on that space.
No, 100%. I think just just chiming in on the same example in third of pharma and biology. And I'm working on this opportunity where, in the biology, there's this AlphaToGo came in, and then OpenFold, which is the open source. And those kind of builders are now trying to like think about how to commercialize it. And I love what Jennifer mentioned, because that's so true, because they're trying to build like a tech company, but then the most commercialized path is towards drug discovery. But then there are like all kinds of these drug discovery companies around, and they're like trying to kind of, intersect where they're like interesting, like pre-seed whole core structures getting formed on the fly, like, we bring in this modern ML pack and data and proprietary codes and model, and then you bring in this commercialization path. So we join forces in terms of doing. I've never seen this kind of, to your point of neural net, right at this early stage happening. So this is like unprecedented speed, and which is kind of not the usual playbook what we have seen in the enterprise software industry traditionally. So it's really great point. Like things are moving so fast, and one should kind of look at how it's kind of land grab. So how do you accelerate the path of innovation, given that everyone is kind of relatively out there? So end of the day, it'll be execution.
You made me think of someone who mentioned a governance company to me, and now I'm going to forget which one it is, but I'm still really excited by this idea. It was an AI to recognize AI that's been deployed. So to basically count the models that your organization has up and running that you might not know about. And I found that very, very compelling, especially in this age where I think one of the challenges that is super important for founders to think about and confront right away is that as this stuff gets more understood by management and corporate and more deployed, the onus to build from first principles for sort of accountability, responsibility, being able to share more of how you got there, what was the model purpose built for, is going to get greater, not lesser.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges with some of the models we have today is that we can't trust them, and that is an issue, right? And we need to build mechanisms to enable us to trust them, or we need to build things starting over from first principles that let us do that, or fine tune things that let us do that. And I think that part, if you're building today, you have to be thinking out ahead about.
So Jennifer, that is the perfect segue to get some of the questions that we have in the Q&A. And actually, there's a question from Georgina that is kind of on kind of the same lines, which is, I'm gonna paraphrase because it's long, but she was working in crypto back in 2014 and 15, and so as you can imagine, it's sensitive to regulatory issues that can help growth, as happened with crypto. So basically what she's asking is, and now that there's more of a consumer facing of AI and more of the attention from the lawmakers, what advice do you guys have for founders that are doing AI first companies, and how they should think about regulatory implication and what might be coming, because it's not clear how's going to be that regulatory environment in probably the not so distant future, right?
I can comment on that. In my investment journey, as I mentioned, I manage a fund, I do angel investments, and my other part, I'm also working with the government, actually advising and consulting in innovation and technology. And my advice to founder will be, government still doesn't know what to do. I will give you an example. I was studying at executive education in Stanford this summer, and there was a professor of ethics and AI, Rob Wright, who was giving a lecture in July. In August, I reached out to him. Hey, I say, let's have a coffee. I would love to discuss something. And he told me that he's right now on sabbatical for a year. So White House reached out to him, and he's writing AI policy. So it is happening as we speak right now. My advice would be, try to find similar companies in the space you're working to. And this is something I'm projecting from medical devices and from healthcare. Get together and try to find pathways to talk to people in the government, help them, advise them, consult them, work together, because White House and the Silicon Valley, that's the problem we're actually trying to solve. And there's some groups who are working on that. They don't know what to do. Government, it's, I would say, not afraid, but trying to regulate it. But it's a happening conversation right now. So I wouldn't be afraid. I will just try to have more conversations, get people together, almost like creating your own alliances. Let's say you're in education space, get the leaders, get the speakers, and try to have the conversation in that direction. And also involve academia. There's lots of research, a lot of smart professors who are there. They have credibility as well to maybe help to foster this conversation.
Yeah, no, I this is a great point. And just to add a little bit of what Valerie said, very practically, I've been seeing, one is that we're seeing a lot of like good companies coming out of Europe just on compliance, just because the way they're a little bit more mature on with the GDPR, the compliance, there's a lot of DNA to that with data security, compliance, biases on model. And I'm personally seeing a lot of like companies far ahead of that, which one can sort of look at it and probably see what applies in this market, because you need both, the advancement of how the products are evolving with the policies in a certain restricted, regulated environment, but at the same time, how would it practically work in the enterprise workflows? So it requires like the know-how of how the enterprise is working out today. Because the enterprise is also spending a lot of money right now by hiring a lot of consultants who's also kind of creating their own sort of kind of safe path before the government and regulations kind of trying to figure out things.
And irony is, I actually heard someone describe the other day at the Resi Bio conference that they felt like this is one of the few times where building in healthcare in the US is easier than in Europe, because the AI regulation here is behind. So we're actually a little more open, and there's a preference for some of those companies to come here and build.
Yeah, that
That's
said,
a
my
good
advice
point.
towards startups would be, look at what's happening in Europe. I think Avi made a great point that, culturally, they've been much more focused on privacy. You see GDPR come in years ago. They are definitely leading the way on regulation, and it's going to take a little while for US to catch up, which is unusual, especially in the tech world.
Yeah.
But I would probably keep an eye on what's happening in Europe and start thinking about those policies and how they might be implemented, because I think the
Yeah.
US will probably end up somewhere close to that.
Some news from Europe. I was just yesterday having a conversation in Munich, just because I'm here. There's a new law, just it's being passed right now. They're developing. It's literally a matter of a couple of months. It's also about privacy protection related to AI, generative AI and LLMs. So what they're trying to do in a nutshell, it's still like half hidden. So people just like have some high level discussions. So for example, you use WhatsApp, right? And you're texting and your data belongs to somebody. So they're trying to create this layer, which is going to be, so all your data will belong to you, but you can use which platforms you're going to use. So actually from a customer perspective, your health data, your chat data, so you will be the owner, and company will have to comply to add this layer. So they are building right now those applications that will be the housing of everything that you own. And it's basically, that's what's happening right now in Europe. It's a new law they're discussing. And I think Germany, Switzerland, France, they're the leaders of those countries. Super interesting.
Yeah,
to be here.
super interesting.
Yeah.
Valerie, thank you for sharing. And I think this is probably going to be the last question, and I'm going to try to summarize a number of different questions that we have in the list here, and most of them are around due diligence. I mean, how are you looking at due diligence for this type of companies? What I mean, and I'll add a few different things here. If are you guys looking at there's the feasibility mode aspect of part of what the due diligence that you're doing, even on the question that is outlined as well is how do you know if this is just a feature or a company, right? Or how they are, I mean, how, and Avi mentioned, and I think someone else about, I mean, this takers concept, right? It means is how do you think, but in general, I think all of these questions can go in around kind of the due diligence and how do you go about looking at these companies given everything that is going on.
I'd be happy to jump in.
Yeah, please go ahead.
But we've started at the beginning and gone to the end. Now we could use the Pied Piper middle.
No
out.
rules now.
So we built our team with people who have significant experience, like domain expertise. In fact, each of our other partners and advisors has over 25 years experience kind of in our specific domains. And so we definitely spend a lot of time in due diligence, and we've also got a PhD on staff to help with the technical due diligence as well. So it's something we take very seriously. We think there should be either proprietary data or unique model. Those are the sorts of things we're looking for each time we go out. It doesn't mean that has to exist. There's certainly a lot more reasons that a company will be successful: the experience of the team, their market approach, their business model. There's a lot of things that end up defining success, but we take due diligence very seriously.
Thank you, Doug, and any other takers for the question?
I can
Let's check
add. I think pretty much. I think all of us, we have network, right? It's either partners in the funds. For me, it's my fellow friends who are now postdocs or people who are in academia. If this is something specific or technical, it's just a message away from somebody who's working on that research to give me an answer. And of course, the classic due diligence about the company and financials. And what is important for me personally, it's something that I've learned through many years of different countries and culturally, it's trust and respect. So you want to trust the team. If in the beginning, in the due diligence process, you feel that somebody's hiding or something is not being said, let's say you want to look at the numbers and they send you a yearly P&L instead of like showing what's happening month by month, like burn rate, how much money do they have? What are they spending on? Are they spending on the big salaries, or are they literally hiring the team of engineers that they're telling they're doing? So you want to have a really transparent and trusting process in the very beginning. That's also, for me, been a big part of diligence, not just running toward the technology, but knowing that you have a good long-term relationship with the team. And also who they're choosing for their cap table, like which investors they're bringing. I think it tells you a lot. Are they choosing big names for specific reason, or they're going maybe for somebody smaller, but who is going to be more hands-on, rolling up their sleeves and going to help them to find this market product fit, to get those customers, and to help them to scale and grow. Very important. The logic of the founders.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Valerie.
I cannot agree more. Like, just 2 cents here. Like, I feel operators generally don't find problem doing diligence, because either they have been there, done that, plus all they have empathy at the same time, have the network, so a nuance and understanding. So that's usually what I've seen. And nowadays, I mean, there are like deep tech invested fund. We are coming. There's a fund, I think it's Fidelity Ventures. Somebody backs them, or they're all a bunch of PhDs. So that has come a long way. Like venture capital is evolving at the same time. There are like domain expertise coming in right there. I feel it's 50-50, both on the investment side of diligence as well as on the startup side. That's how it should be perceived, rather than just FOMO taking over everything sort of thing.
That's a good point, Abhi. I mean, startups should do their due diligence as well. Not all checks are equal. And so I always urge startups to interview the CEOs of the companies that fund has invested in. So, yeah.
I would say a super important thing right now, especially for technical founders, and we see a lot of technical founders and at the early stages, is really getting out to try to understand your customer and get those use cases and where you expect to sell. What problem are you really solving is just critical. And that's a large part of our diligence, trying to understand what market is there and what market will be there. If we think it's something that's more greenfield or bluefield that you're growing into. And then as everyone said, it's about building trust with the team. And do you believe that this team can get where you want to go? And do you want to be on the journey together? And because it is a journey, and the hardest part of building a company comes after the pen is stroked on the check, right? That's when it really begins. And so And there are many ways to get there. That's the other thing. Venture capital isn't the end all be all. We've been looking at a company recently that has substantial revenue that they've raised through government contracts over the years, but not grants, and is now at the place where the market is understanding what they're doing because of the types of AI that are in the market and becoming popular, and the return of interest, and that makes a great opportunity for them to look at the next stage of growth. So there's many, many ways to set foot on your path.
Nice. Well, amazing how this hour fly by. I mean, we are at the end of this, so really, really thank you to the panel here, Doug, Abby, Valerie, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here. I want to be respectful of your time and the time of the audience, so we are gonna wrap up here. But just a reminder of everyone, keep an eye of what we are doing with Founder Institute and specifically with the AI Hub. We are gonna be, if you're interested, just let me know, and please give some love to the panel here. We pasted their LinkedIn, so follow them and keep an eye on what they're gonna be doing, because certainly they've been sharing a lot of the insights and perspectives. So this has been very valuable. Thank you so much for everyone. And to the audience, I mean, I'm surprised that up to this point, we haven't had almost anyone leave. So really appreciate you guys staying and sticking with us, and hope to see you guys soon. Thank you so much to everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
It's a
guys.
pleasure to
you.
meet you, all my fellow panelists. See you again, Abby.
Thank you.
Ignacio.
Likewise.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Bye.
much, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ignacio, thank you very much again for inviting. It was really nice.
Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome, Barry. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope your sailing trip was good as well.
Oh, sailing was fantastic. We were super, like, if you have a few more minutes, I can just share. It was really good
Let
weather.
me let me
You
let
wanna
me see if
reconnect?
we
Oh.
can.
You need to stop recording.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think we